Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman, here, as always, with Tom Orr. And the news is now out. Urban Meyer will retire after the Rose Bowl. Ryan Day, his offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach, will take over for him on January 2nd. And Tom, I feel kind of not upset at Urban Meyer for this, but this is episode 99, this episode that people are listening to right now. If Urban could have just waited one more week, we could have made the 100th episode a very special episode. Now, as it is, it's just going to be averaged like every other episode. So I'm kind of like, congratulations to Urban Meyer, but kind of a jerk move not waiting like one more week so that we could make this episode, the 100th episode, more special or special, you know?
I mean, I think he probably knows that next week's episode is going to be special just because they're all kind of special in their own way. This is like, every week was a very special episode of Blossom. That's kind of like this. Every episode is a very special week of Buckeye Weekly. And he knew that next week, as the 100th episode, would definitely be special as it was. So he decided to get the party started a week early, which, respect to him for that.
Maybe he just didn't want to be a distraction to the 100th episode. And so he's like, you know what? We've got the early signing day to worry about. We've got the Rose Bowl. We've got the transition. We've got the 100th episode of the Buckeye Weekly podcast. Let's just get everything out of the way, get everything out in the open. That way, all of these processes can happen without the Urban Meyer distraction. And I guess maybe we should thank him for that. So thank you for that, Urban Meyer. And now you walk off into the sunset where, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, but he won't be walking off far, it doesn't sound like. His decision to step down, I think we all understand it's health related. It wasn't all health related though, Tom, when he was asked why now, and he said it was a cumulative thing. And somebody asked, during the Tuesday morning afternoon press conference, was it also because of what happened this summer? And he said, sure, some of that as well. And we saw throughout the season, there are times where it had just been a long season for him. And what feels like every season feels like a super fast season when you're covering it and when you're in the middle of it. If you go back to his July and his August, and it all started back in the Big Ten media days. And I'm sure at that point there was, time almost stopped for him when you had that entire Zach Smith thing. And then you've got the paid administrative leave, and then you've got the suspension, and just, I'm sure back then it was excruciating just trying to get back to his team. And then when he finally is back, I felt like he was savoring it more, especially after the Michigan game, him and Shelley in the tunnel there, where that's where you really kind of began to think like this is definitely going to be his last go round against Michigan, just the way that they were so emotional. So, Tom, were you, somebody asked me, were you surprised? I'm like, well, I was kind of surprised that it was today, but this wasn't really a surprise.
No, here's how much of not a surprise this was. I had about an 800-word article posted about 47 seconds after the news came out. So either we had a sense this was coming and had prepared something, or I learned to type very fast today. One of those two. I don't know which one. The timing was a little bit of a surprise. I think that we both had heard enough things, and then just based on what we had heard and based on some of the things you had seen, just you could see in front of you, and you could sort of see them shaping a narrative to set this up, that it was pretty clear this was going to happen at some point. If there was any doubt at all, the Pete Thamel article that came out after the Maryland game that was detailing, boy, this is very hard on Urban, the medical issues, and he looks miserable on the sidelines. For that to come from Pete Thamel, who is Urban's basically go-to national guy, who's very close with Urban personally, that probably had to get run through Urban to at least some degree. I don't think Pete Thamel was out on an island doing that by himself and burning a bridge with Urban. So when that came out, it was like, that is sort of what setting up a narrative looks like, that, hey, this is coming and don't be prepared for it. It's like when, this is a really weird comparison, but when royalty dies in England or in another country, they always have this like, oh, things are looking grave kind of thing. So it's not just out of nowhere. People sort of have time to sort of prepare themselves. That's sort of the, how you sort of gently guide people down the path to, this is probably how it's going to happen. And this is probably going to happen pretty soon. So that was the Pete Thamel article was the king does not look well. And today the king is dead. Long live the king, I guess, if we're going to carry this metaphor to its conclusion.
So you're a Blossom guy and you pay attention to the British royals. Is that what we're learning today?
Prince George looked very handsome on the cover of People magazine a few months
ago. All right.
ago.
Okay. That's enough. Yeah. That's enough royal talk. You do the royal talk on your royal podcast, okay? This is our Ohio State football podcast. You do Tom Orr on the Royals and Mets. It's like a baseball and royalty thing.
It's just about the 2015 World Series. I just get to relive that over and over and over again.
And also you talk a little bit about Brett Saberhagen and, his time with both teams. He was a Met, right?
He was a Met.
So I thought the interesting thing that one of the interesting things, there are many, but some new stuff where Urban talked about how he first began thinking about stepping down in 2014 due to these issues. And then in 2016, there were more. In 2017 again, got worse. And then this year, obviously, he decided that enough was enough. But if you go back to 2014 and he decided to step down at that time, we could have Tom Herman in year 4 of his Ohio State run. Do you, Tom, believe that he would be headed for year 5, or do you think he would have been getting fired here shortly?
Boy, trying to put myself in the mindset of beloved Ohio State head coach Tom Herman. It's gonna take a while to get myself in that particular headspace, given some of the other activities and storylines of 2018. But I think, he has shown himself to be a solid coach, and he would have taken over a program that was in better shape than Houston was when he took it over, and in better shape than Texas was when he took it over. So, I think he at least would be a Big Ten championship caliber team. He has certainly not shown that he can get over the hump and run the table. He does a little bit like what Urban has done in recent years, and always wins as an underdog seemingly, and then loses as, blows a silly one as a favorite every once in a while. So I think he could. They would be good, but I don't know that I necessarily think they would have won a national championship if Herman was here.
Imagine if Herman was here, and we'll get off on this away from this tangent here in a sec. But imagine if he was here, and then the Zach Smith stuff still goes down, and then you've got Zach Smith tweeting about the current Ohio State head coach, and I guess we would have to cover some of that, but I don't want to go calling Asian massage parlors for quotes at all about anything. But I guess in the interest of journalistic duties, which is a terrible word also. I'll just say that. I guess I'm glad that, Urban stuck it out in 2014, toughed it out, and then finally decided this year, okay, I can now move on. And I wonder, he said today on Tuesday that it's easier to move on because things are going so well. and if that Maryland game goes awry or the Nebraska game as well, say they're 9-3 instead of 11-1 heading into the Big Ten championship game, does he step aside, or does he think, you know what, I need to give it one more year to get them back to where I feel better about giving them, handing them off? Because he still, you can tell, I believe, when he left Florida after the 2010 season, talked about how, he's always quoted, or the one quote is always brought back, where he said the program was broken. And I think he doesn't feel great about that. The Ohio State program is not broken. And that's why he said he felt better about giving it off, handing it off, because of where it is now and the infrastructure that is in place. But if they lose that Maryland game or lose another game in there as well, Tom, do you think he's still at 9-3? Is he still the Ohio State head coach in 2019?
I think he might be. I think that is entirely possible that he coaches one more year if Maryland catches that pass or if they lose to Michigan. I think there's a decent possibility. I'm going to read you the quote that he had. He didn't specifically say it was about Maryland, but you did not have to read very far between the lines to figure out what he was talking about. He said, "Ryan and I have talked, and this profession we've chosen is so fragile. You drop a pass, you drop this, someone's 2-point conversion gets caught. This is a tough deal now, and we've lived it our entire lives." So, I mean, that's hints at the fact that the Maryland game, if it had gone a different way, if they don't win the division, if Michigan wins the division and they finish 10-2 this year, don't go to the Big Ten championship game, that he may view that as some kind of unfinished business. And he had something else to say that later that I think might be even more of a hint that might be true. He talked about, I don't have the exact quote in front of me, but he talked about the fact that this would be a much harder deal if he didn't feel like he was leaving the program in good shape. And I think all the structural stuff would be the same. The Mickey Marotti and Mark Pantoni and all of the off the field stuff they have and Real Life Wednesdays and all that kind of stuff. And they've had, everything has gone pretty well off the field player wise the last year. Staff wise is another issue, obviously, but in general, player wise, things have gone well the last year. I think he feels like he's leaving the program in pretty good shape. And he said, basically, if I didn't feel like the program was in good shape right now, this would be a pretty tough deal to leave. And the fact that he does feel like things are in pretty good shape, both on and off the field, I think that makes that a much easier decision for him.
I think it would be an interesting question if Michigan had won that game, if he had lost to Michigan. I don't think he steps aside, because I don't think he wants to be seen as, well, first, I don't think you want to leave with that taste in your mouth. Certainly you don't want to leave thinking like, when he was chased out of the SEC by Nick Saban. I'm sure he doesn't want to be chased out of the Big Ten by Jim Harbaugh. And so I think he would have toughed it out for another year, or continue to give off more roles to Ryan Day. Although it was interesting on Tuesday when he said that he was delegating and it wasn't working, so he had to, get more involved. But he had said the same thing about his Florida days. But today, on Tuesday, when he said it, it sounded like he was talking about his Ohio State team, like this year. And it's interesting that, that would mean defense or the running game, where he maybe had to get more involved, or he considered it broken, or some language like that. I don't have it right in front of me, but where, what he had delegated did not produce in the way that he wanted, so he had to get more involved. And I believe, I just don't think he would want to walk away from a loss to Michigan, a loss to Jim Harbaugh in Ohio Stadium. Part of that, because when you think about it, and you don't have to think hard about it, his success against Michigan is part of his legacy at Ohio State, 7-0. And I asked on Twitter on Tuesday, I asked Buckeye fans, what what will you remember more fondly, the 7-0 against Michigan or winning a national title? And it was almost 62-39 in favor of the national title. And I guess that's the right answer, because, people would also accept a national title with having Meyer go 6-1. That national title trumps a lot. Tom, I don't know, like in 15, 20 years though, will the 7-0 stand out more than the national title, do you think?
I think it probably is more difficult to do 7-0 because you think about there's a lot of coaches that have won a national championship. Larry Coker won a national championship. Now, he did it with inherited players, but lots of coaches have won national championships. Going 7-0 against Michigan, to go 7-0 against your biggest rival, that requires a level of sustained excellence that I think is very difficult to maintain. You look at Larry Coker. Larry Coker could not maintain the level of excellence it was required to beat Florida State 7 years in a row. That is a very difficult thing. Nick Saban has won a whole bunch of national championships. Nick Saban has not beaten Auburn 7 years in a row. And Auburn, he's lost to some kind of lousy Auburn teams at times. That is a very difficult thing to do. And I think that you can not quite luck into a national championship, but you don't have to be the best team in the nation to win a national championship one year. Just you need some things to fall right. I think that in order to sustain the level of success that he has had over not always excellent Michigan teams, but consistently pretty decent Michigan teams. He's not playing the early Rich Rod teams that went 3-9 and 5-7. He's playing pretty good teams most years, and he's beaten them very consistently. You think about how close some of those games have been, but he's been, the coin has come up heads every time, even the close ones. So I think in a lot of ways that might be a more impressive achievement, even if it's not the thing that necessarily gets remembered the most fondly, 20 years from now.
When you look at Jim Tressel, people talk more about his record against Michigan than his national title, I believe. Everybody remembers, obviously, the 2002 season and reveres it. But when you think of Jim Tressel, you talk about him, it's his domination over Michigan. It's not the national title. And I assume that the similar things will happen with Urban Meyer down the road when people look back. And maybe by that point, Ryan Day will have his own national title, and it just becomes the norm where you win one title and you dominate Michigan, and I guess that's okay. When Urban was asked about his legacy and what he wants it to be remembered or how he wants it to be, he said he wants it to be the truth. And that's something that right now the national columnists that you're expecting to throw out the hit pieces are throwing out the hit pieces where they bring up his time at Florida, all of the Zach Smith stuff, the abuse, the blatant abuse that he turned a blind eye to, that he saw, apparently, and just totally ignored because that's what he would do because he's a monster. All of these things that are either way in the past or have been debunked, where it's just being all brought up again, and now he's leaving another program in a disgraced manner, or worse off than when he got there. And it's very typical, and I can understand why he would want his legacy to, why he would say he just wants the truth out there. And a lot of the truth would be the programs for the players. And towards the end of his answer about that, he said he wants 100% job placement for his players in terms of the Real Life Wednesdays program, and getting everybody jobs after football or even during football. But the legacy that he is leaving is also the infrastructure for Ryan Day. And when Gene Smith says he wants a seamless transition, that's also part of Urban Meyer's legacy. Everything is ready made and it's ongoing and it's so well organized that it can run on its own. It's, he's got the right staffers in place. You let Ryan Stamper do his thing with the Real Life Wednesdays. You let Mark Pantoni do his thing with recruiting. And all of these things just get taken care of while Ryan Day can go be the head coach in recruiting, and while together they can game plan for Washington in the Rose Bowl. And when Gene Smith says he wants a seamless transition, this was the only way to do it. And not that that's what he wanted most, but when you weigh all of these factors, like who should I go get, who is the best guy for the job, Urban Meyer is the best guy for the job. So maybe you try to keep things as Urban Meyer-ish as possible, which includes the guy who Meyer has been mentoring and essentially preparing for this role for the last 2 years.
You got the sense listening to Gene Smith on Tuesday that this was very much a if it ain't broke, don't fix it kind of thing, where you're right. This is the most Urban Meyer hire you could possibly make. There is not a home run hire out there right now. Multiple-time national championship winner with close ties to Ohio State that is just sitting out there waiting to come back. Like, there is not whoever the 2018 version of 2012 Urban Meyer is, he's not out there right now. There's not an easy hire like that. So failing that, you bring in the guy who keeps everything is running smoothly right now. You bring in the guy who keeps things running smoothly. And like you said, you said it runs itself, and that's probably true to some degree. I don't want people to misunderstand that and think that just means everything's just going to keep going exactly the way it has been for years and nothing's going to change. Their stuff is going to change, and it's probably not realistic to expect things to stay exactly as incredible as they have been for the last 7 years. But I think that there's reason to think that Ryan Day should be able to keep things going at something close to this level for several years at the very least, and then you see, the machine is humming right now, but you always have to sit there and tinker with it and adjust settings and make sure it's good. You gotta, even if your car's running well, you gotta go get your oil changed every 3,000 miles. That's how it is. So you have to keep working on the machine and making sure things stay just as tip top as they are right now. So he certainly can keep it at that level, and that, I think this was the safest move right now that Gene Smith could have made. I don't think, Matt, all the other names that you've heard, Matt Campbell has done a great job at Iowa State, but he is not 2012 Urban Meyer waiting to come in here. That is not, if you cannot get Nick Saban, there is not or maybe Dabo Swinney, there is not an Urban Meyer 2012 analog available right now. So you do the best you can, and you keep the Urban Meyer thing going as long as you can.
That's one of the points I wanted to talk about was the Matt Campbell thing. There really isn't, like, when you ask, like, well, Ohio State should have done a national search, you don't really need to, because there's only 4, 5, 6 guys at any one time out there who can have this job, who you would consider for this job. And Matt Campbell is the first name you always hear. Bob Stoops is another one, and that's basically it. It's those two and Ryan Day. And Matt Campbell is 54-33 in his career. With he's done well at Toledo and Iowa State, 2 back-to-back years of 8 wins at Iowa State. But you don't know what his program does at Ohio State. You will have Ryan Day, who you know very well, basically taking over Urban Meyer's program and then eventually morphing it into his own program. But there are more knowns with Ryan Day and Urban Meyer than there would be with Matt Campbell or Bob Stoops. And the Stoops things, I don't even think they wanted to to go down that road. And Gene Smith said he did look around the nation. Let's not forget, I mean, he's on the playoff committee, so they're watching games all the time, and his job is to know, just like Urban Meyer always has a list of potential assistants, Gene Smith knows all of the head coaches. And like I said, it's not like he needs to be looking at, like, what's that Delaware offensive coordinator doing this week? I got my eye on him. There's, one hand you can count the legitimate candidates, and I don't think Luke Fickell's not even one of those. So, for those who are saying Luke Fickell, no. So it's a very small group. And Urban Meyer fell into their lap. Jim Tressel was waiting for the phone call. He turned Miami down a few years before that. Was just like, please, Ohio State, call me. There's no legend waiting, so now you've got a guy, Ryan Day, who has performed well, has done everything you've asked and beyond it. And you've seen him work as the head coach, and you're thinking, well, I've got a pretty good idea because I've seen it. Now, what happens in year 3 when things are now coming down to his recruits and everything is in his image? We'll find out, but I don't think that's any different than any other coach, because maybe Matt Campbell's system doesn't work at Ohio State. Maybe the way he likes to do things, maybe his infrastructure doesn't work. Maybe it just doesn't, because like Urban Meyer said on Tuesday, like, it's Ohio State is different than anywhere else. And Gene Smith tried to explain that to him in 2012, and Urban was like, yeah, whatever, until he saw it. So it's a different place. Ryan Day knows what that difference is and is comfortable with it and willing to take it on. And so this seems like the best option. And, I don't know, Tom, to call Ryan Day the best option is, was there a best option, or is he the closest to the best option? Is there a best option, or is it like it wasn't a great pool to choose from, but that doesn't mean they still really, really, really like Ryan Day?
I think Ryan Day is the safest option.
Yeah.
I don't know that he's best assumes a whole bunch of stuff about outside candidates that we don't know and that I don't think anyone can really possibly know, including Gene Smith. You don't know how, I don't know, pick a name. I don't think they would hire a MAC coach, but say Luke Fickell. Luke Fickell's done a nice job at Cincinnati, and he's got them improving. Matt Campbell has done a very nice job at Iowa State and is recruiting there at a level that they have basically never recruited before. Fickell's recruiting very well at Cincinnati, but Matt Campbell, you don't know if he can recruit the types of players that Ohio State is recruiting right now. Like he's recruiting really well for Iowa State, but that means we're getting some pretty good 3-stars. There's a whole different level to in the Ohio State program that Matt Campbell hasn't quite done yet. There's a whole, Luke Fickell has done a very nice job at Cincinnati. It's been this is his second year there, yeah. Right? You haven't sustained the success there. I think if it was Luke Fickell, I think there would be a lot of people kind of giving that hire the side eye just based on the 2011 season, and people have not forgotten that. I wonder, honestly, if Luke Fickell had not coached 2011 and it was just he was the former Ohio State assistant who had recruited well at Cincinnati and gotten that program kind of turned around pretty quickly after the Tommy Tuberville fiasco down there, I wonder if, had he not had that 6-7 season in 2011 at Ohio State, if he might be a more appealing candidate to people in Columbus now than he is as it is.
Yeah, I think he definitely would be. It's like the backup quarterback. You don't know, when the starting quarterback struggles, you know he sucks. You don't know what the other guys, the backups, you don't know that they suck yet. And so they've seen Luke Fickell go 6-7 as Ohio State's head coach in a year where Nick Saban is going to go 8-5 at best, I think, with the quarterback situation that Ohio State had and just all of the turmoil there. And the suspensions and having so many players not available for the first 5 games and coming back willy-nilly from this suspension or that. It was an impossible season for Luke Fickell, but that's still, I mean, that's what taints him in a lot of eyes, probably my eyes as well. You had your opportunity and you blew it. You didn't go undefeated with Joe Bauserman as your starting quarterback. You have failed to be Ohio State's head coach. And obviously that's incredibly unfair. But even like 2 years at Cincinnati still doesn't seem like enough of an audition to be Ohio State's head coach. But I definitely think there would be more talk about it if there wasn't the 2011 season seared into everybody's brain, even after Urban Meyer has put so many good memories in there. As we know, Tom, it's impossible to get the bad memories out. Good memories fade. The bad memories, they're there forever. They're scars.
Oh, I'm sure everyone listening right now, if they thought for 30 seconds, could probably name all 9 of Urban Meyer's losses in his 7 years. Like, off the top of their heads, they could probably name those 9 losses. So, yeah, you're right. This is Ohio State football. The losses stick with people a lot more than the wins. That's just the nature of the beast. You remember every loss because every Urban Meyer loss was basically a season killer, just about, because he lost like one game a year. So that was the one game he lost. That was the game that killed their championships hopes, except for 2014. So I think that's. There was a lot of talk today about the expectation, and Urban kind of jokingly said, as long as you win every game and graduate all your players, you'll be fine. Don't mess that up. He basically said to Ryan Day, win every game, graduate all your players, go get them, Tiger.
Exactly.
Like, all right, well, is that all there is to this job? Easy, sounds good. Sign me up.
Done and done. Last week when Ohio State basketball honored Thad Matta, one of the things Thad said was, when you're a coach, all you remember are the losses. When you retire, all you think about are the wins. And I think fans, media, it's hard to ignore the losses unless they are, wins over Michigan kind of cloud over the other things, but Meyer will be remembered for all of his wins, and now that he is retiring, he will be able to finally probably think about those as opposed to the losses like coaches do. I thought it was interesting where, all of these talk shows and pundits being asked if this will be Urban Meyer's last coaching job, and I think they all say no because they never believe anything that he says. On Tuesday, he said that he believes this is his last job, that he can just stay in Columbus and just chill. He'll still be around the program. Ryan Day said he's, got free access to come in whenever he wants. He fully expects Meyer to be breaking down special teams, punt block videos and things like that. And Gene Smith said he still hopes Shelley's around doing what she does. And Urban's 2 daughters live in Columbus, and his 2 grandchildren will as well. Once the second one comes, his son is down in Cincinnati playing baseball. So, I maybe him and Shelley get a place in Cincinnati, for their baseball. But it sure seemed like he is content with being in Columbus. And if there really is, if the best medicine for him is to be stress-free, or as stress-free as he can get, then, I'm okay believing him that he's done coaching. Where are you?
You kind of have to take him at his word at this point. I'm going to read the transcript from the Tuesday press conference. Coach Meyer, I believe I will not coach again. Question, are you fairly certain? Meyer, I'm certain, yes. And then the follow-up is, do you anticipate staying in Columbus and being around? He says, I do. I love Columbus. I love Muirfield, where I live. I've always been a Buckeye as long as I can remember. Gene Smith, like I said, our relationship has always been very good. It's over the top now, and I trust him with my life, and our families are very close. So, and then he says, however I can help this, I believe in Ohio State. I believe in the spirit when you walk around this campus. I believe in Buckeye Nation because I lived it my entire life. I believe that this is a different place, and I want to help in any way I can, and I believe in our new head coach. So, based on everything he said there, he's going to be around. There has not been a specific role discussed for him, but the Earl Bruce Michigan pep talk role is currently vacant. So that would be a pretty good spot to work him in once a year. And if he's going to stay in Columbus, and Shelley Meyer wants to go live in Florida during the winters, like, yeah, sure, go live in Columbus. Live in Columbus like Earl Bruce did. Live in Columbus during the summers and the falls, and then go live in Florida during the winter. You don't have to be here during March. Nobody needs you here in March. Go live down there then, and then come back up here so you're not living in 9,000 degrees and 150% humidity in Florida during the summer and the fall. Ohio is a very pleasant place to be in the fall, and that's when he would probably be most wanted around these parts in terms of advice for Ryan Day and all that. And I think Ryan Day knows that. Ryan Day kind of joked that he was sure that Urban would be watching punt schemes and have opinions on what they should do on punt, and have opinions on what they should do, whether they should go for it or not on fourth down and all that kind of stuff, and probably let him know at some point. So I think that it certainly sounds like he's planning on sticking around. And who knows if he's 3 years from now, if he gets the itch again, he could always go coach. But right now he sounds pretty happy with just doing what he's doing and living a little bit more relaxed life. That would probably not be a bad thing for him.
Gene Smith mentioned Urban Meyer's quote new role, I believe he said, within the athletic department. It sounds like I wouldn't think he would just be limited to football. It sounds like he, may become just like a go-to guy to talk to the teams, to various teams throughout the athletic department, and be like, not a liaison, not a mascot, but just be around and part of the program, a visible figure. I'm sure Nike would prefer that. I'm sure there'll be some contractual things there as well. But I don't think it would be too bad to have him continue to be a part of the program. I wonder how much recruiting he can do if he's, I'm just here at the office. I just happen to be in the football facilities, and how much can he interact with recruits at that time now? Because, he does enjoy that sort of stuff. So, it'll be interesting to see how he interacts with Ryan Day and Ryan Day's program, and also doesn't get, I guess, too involved and lets Day do his own thing and doesn't want to become a distraction. You don't really hear, this is very similar to what Bob Stoops and Lincoln Riley have done, and Urban Meyer and Bob Stoops are very close, so I'm guessing they have talked about how this went down for Stoops and what he has done, and I would expect some similarities from Meyer's part. But you congratulate Ryan Day on getting the job, but Tom, these are some expectations that nobody can match. 901 winning percentage could go up to, 902 or 903 with maybe even 904 with a win against Washington. I'm not sure of the exact math, but we're talking 8 losses over 7 seasons. Is that 9 losses? And averaging 12 wins a year. It's impossible to expect that from Ryan Day. It's impossible to expect that from Urban Meyer, and yet people were getting upset with Meyer for not reaching the expectations that they had for him. And you just hope that, yes, this is Ohio State and you want to win a national title, and that should be the goal every year, but you are losing one of the top college football coaches of all time. Don't expect to, once again, don't expect to go from Jim Tressel, one of the top college football coaches of all time, to somebody higher in the rankings. There is really nobody else higher in the rankings that Ohio State is going to get than Urban Meyer. So just give Ryan Day some time. Don't expect him to be Urban Meyer. Let him be Ryan Day and see how that goes. Am I crazy, Tom, to think that, he's not Urban Meyer, so just chill?
it is completely unrealistic to expect him to maintain Ohio State at the current pace that Urban Meyer had them on. It just Urban Meyer is unquestionably one of the three greatest active head coaches in college football, and you could make a pretty good argument that he's somewhere in the top 10, top 20 all-time ever any coach in the history of college football. That is not an easy act to follow, and Meyer was asked, when you were 36 and you took the Bowling Green job, would you have been able to handle the Ohio State job? And it was like, oh, no. So Urban Meyer is not the same coach he was when he was 36. He did say Ryan Day is much further along than he was at that point, and he thinks Ryan Day is ready for this kind of a job. But Ryan Day is not a finished product as a head coach. Ryan Day, I'm sure, has some mistakes he's going to have to learn from in the coming years. That's just how the process works. And he is not going to be, even if he is someday, if it turns out to be an Urban Meyer clone, he is just as good as Urban Meyer, which is a completely unrealistic expectation to put on anyone. Even if he ends up that good at some point, he's not going to be there yet. He's not going to be there from day one. That's just not how it works. He has a lot of learning to do. He has to, he's going to have a lot of new responsibilities. Running the program for August and, game days in September is great, and it's a little bit of a test drive that Ohio State got to take him on, basically, and see how he did. And he obviously passed that test in their eyes. So that's good. That's great. But, it's like test driving a car. You test drive a car, you take it out of the dealership, you go, around the block, you maybe go on the highway for a minute and, okay, now I know how the car drives on the highway. And it's like, okay, but then the first time it snows, you've never actually driven the car in the snow. So yes, you've had a test drive, but you don't know how it's going to handle in all possible situations. So that's I think where Ryan Day is. He passed the test drive, but there's still a whole lot of questions still to answer. And he very well may answer all of them, but they have to get answered at some point, and he's not quite there yet.
And God help him if he loses at Michigan next season. Then it's over. You can't do that. Lose your first Michigan game. No way, man. The pressure is immense, but I also think what Urban Meyer has built alleviates some of that pressure. Now he has to maintain it, and I think that's also going to be part of the difficulty. But this is a program that does not need to be rebuilt, so you can take it over. That test drive, he's like running, the car is already moving. He just jumps in the front seat and continues this test drive. It's not the safest way to do a test drive, mind you, but it does just keep things going smoothly. I also wonder if he is so connected to Urban Meyer, and this is the transition plan, and if he doesn't reach those standards, it's going to be seen as a disappointment, in which case, can anybody really succeed? What is success? Is 10-2 on average? Is that acceptable? Probably not. I think you need to be, Tom, 1.5 losses is probably a year. Like, you don't want to be more than, you can't be 10-2 every year. There's got to be, that's just not good enough. There's got to be some 12 wins in there, either 13, 14. There's a certain level that you have to reach. And even if there's a 9-win season in there, Tressel had that. I think he had 2 of those, 2001, 2004. And people were I guess, okay with it in terms of yeah, that happens here. That happens here. The thing is, it never happened with Urban Meyer at Ohio State. Never less than 12 wins, 11 wins. So now I guess that's the new normal, but it shouldn't be. And like we've talked about with Michigan, where Jim Harbaugh has Michigan where Michigan used to be and beyond, let's not lose track of what Ohio State was before Urban Meyer. And maybe if Ryan Day can just be as good as Jim Tressel, hey, that wouldn't be so bad.
I think that if he is where Jim Tressel was the last 4 years of his career, 2007, they lost a couple games. They made the national championship game, but that's a bizarre year that is not, that is not a year they would have made the national championship game in most seasons. 2009, they lost a couple games but made the Rose Bowl. 2010, they made the Sugar Bowl. I think they lost a couple games that year. It's not, I mean, if Ryan Day does that, if Ryan Day wins the Big Ten, beats Michigan, and gets them to the Rose Bowl but not the college football playoff, I think people are going to think that's a failure, and that's something that should get him fired. That's the perspective that I think people need to get on the Urban Meyer era. This is not normal. This is not what a human being, like a normal human being, can do with a college football program. If you judge your program based off of what Urban Meyer did at Ohio State, or you just base everything off of, well, they're not as good as Alabama. Well, no one's as good as Alabama. Clemson's not as good as Alabama, and Clemson's freaking incredible right now. Ohio State has literally, since 1890, never had a 7-year stretch like the 7-year stretch they just had under Urban Meyer. You cannot base your expectations off of that, or you're just going to be miserable and disappointed all the time. And if you want to be miserable and disappointed all the time, go be an Alabama fan. Like, they might win a little more over the next 7 years than Ohio State does, but they all hate their lives too. Look at how miserable Nick Saban looks. Like, you're going to have to just accept the fact that this is not a sustainable level of success on an infinite timeline. That's just not how college football works. If he's got a 5-year contract, if I told you he's going to beat Michigan 3 out of the next 5 years, maybe 4 out of the next 5 years. Let's say he beats Michigan 4 out of the next 5 years, wins the division 3 times, wins 2 conference championships, and reaches the college football championship game. Reaches the playoffs at least once, maybe twice. Reaches the national championship game once, but doesn't win a national championship. Is that success to you? Is that what success looks like to you, or is that unacceptable? What do you think? What do you think, and what do you think the broader consensus of Ohio State fans would be about that?
I think that is a successful run. I think it was a successful year this year. Now, you talk about 5 years. So 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Those 5 years, Urban Meyer reached the playoffs twice, won 3 Big Ten titles. So that's the standard we're talking about. And if Ryan Day just falls just short, you have to be okay with that, because we're talking Urban Meyer at the top and just about everybody else in the coaching profession, a notch below. And if Ryan Day meets those standards that Urban Meyer set, then how can you be disappointed, or how can you think he has failed, even though there are people who are disappointed in Urban Meyer the last few years and believe that he has failed. And what he has failed is that he has brought in this talent through his recruiting, and he has failed to get those recruits to play well enough to win a national title every year. Winning a national title is almost impossible, and it's damn difficult to do, but the expectations are that it has to get done, and when it doesn't, that's viewed as a disappointment. And I think that's wrong. It's wrong to be like that. It's okay to. This year is a very good year with a win over Washington. Is it disappointing that you missed the playoffs? Yes, but again, don't get blown out by Purdue, and it wouldn't be an issue. The disappointing thing is like that one game. It's an entire season, and it's sidetracked by that one game. That's college football. That's the way it's always been. It's okay to enjoy the good parts of the season and let that overshadow the fact that the Purdue game cost you an opportunity to play for a national title. Now, playing for the national title is no guarantee that you're going to win it. It's more, as we saw in 2016, it's also a possibility to completely ruin your season. And the only good part about the 2016 season is the double overtime win over Michigan. We don't even really talk about that season. And if you can do what Urban Meyer did in terms of, I mean, you've set those standards. If Ryan Day can do that, then I think people have to be happy with it, even though they weren't necessarily happy with it with Urban Meyer. So when I say people should be happy with it, I don't know what I'm talking about, because they won't be, unless if there is only one playoff appearance in those 5 years, Tom, that's almost a fireable offense.
It might be perceived as that in some quarters, yes. I guess it almost depends when that playoff appearance is. If that playoff appearance is 2019 and then they don't make it 4 years in a row, I could see the drumbeat getting louder for them to get rid of him. But if it's three or 4 years in, then that makes it a much more sellable thing, I think, to keep him around. And frankly, I think it's a little bit insane that that's the level of expectation. I think you have to, if the level of expectation at Ohio State is beat Michigan more than half the time, I think is a very reasonable expectation.
Yes.
You're not going to beat them. You are not going to beat them 16 out of 18 years all the time. Historically, that is a complete anomaly and a function of having two Hall of Fame coaches at a time when Michigan has been at or below their normal historical standards for the most part. So that 16 of 18 is not something that's going to happen over the span of the next 18 years. Just you should just make your peace with that right now. But if they can win out of the next 18 games, you can win 11, 12 of them. That's pretty good. If Ryan Day is the head coach here for 18 years and goes 11-7 against Michigan, I think you would probably have to take that. And so you beat Michigan more than half the time. You win the Big Ten every 2 to 3 years, and you make the college football playoff maybe every 4 years. And the years you don't, you go win the Rose Bowl. Like that would make him a Hall of Fame college football coach if he does that. And I think that there are people who would view that as a complete failure, as an absolute, like, that is unacceptable. We don't lose to Michigan anymore. We don't, any year that is not. And I wrote articles about the Rose Bowl and how the Rose Bowl was incredible. And there were people in the comments talking about how this was a miserable failure of a year and what a disgrace. And it's like they were 12-1. They throttled Michigan in a way that no Ohio State team has ever done. And then they win the Big Ten, and now they're going to the Rose Bowl, and you're completely miserable about it. Like, that is just not a level of expectation that will lead to you enjoying the sport at all. That's not realistic. It's not. You can pound the table and talk about, having standards of excellence and all that kind of stuff, which is fine, but you're sitting in a recliner spilling French onion dip on your shirt. So whatever. Like, that's not. You can have whatever standards you want, but those are not realistic standards, and I don't think people will feel that they're obligated to live up to them. I think that if they can just beat Michigan more than half of the time, win the Big Ten every third year, go to the playoff at least once every 4 years, like that would be a very, very successful program to pretty much every college football fan outside of the absolute fever swamp of the Alabama or Ohio State or maybe Clemson at this point fan bases.
Yeah, the standard for beating Michigan is win more than you lose. If you have a winning record against Michigan, that's a success. What Jim Tressel did, what Urban Meyer did, those aren't realistic expectations. It's you win more than you lose. What's your record against Michigan? Well, I was 3-2. That's successful, for the players. That's good job. You earned that, and congratulations, you have a winning record against Michigan. To think that 6-1 against Michigan would be seen as a failure, or 5-2, is ridiculous and short-sighted, and loses any sense of the history of the rivalry. So if you've lost sense of the history of the rivalry, then you really don't have any skin in the game. You don't have any right to talk about the rivalry. If you think Ohio State should, I'm owed this win, or we're entitled to this because we're Ohio State and we've won 16 of 18. You're crazy. Every win should be cherished, and just because you've got 7 in a row doesn't mean that 7 more in a row are coming. And the fact that you think like you're entitled to that means that you haven't experienced enough losses in that series. And Tom, I guess it's unfortunate for Ryan Day. It's time that Ohio State loses this game so that people can understand how much they hate it when they lose. But then unfortunately, Ryan Day would have to be fired. So maybe we don't need that right away. Although, again, we did not get a coaching search, which significantly cuts down on our clicks. So it's kind of a jerk move by Gene Smith in that way as well. Next time, let's extend it out for a good 2-3 months. I don't care if it hurts recruiting. Just really let it bleed out and let everybody get the coaching search pieces that they enjoy reading. I would like to do a daily hot board of, what we're hearing now of at least 40 coaches every day, 3 months straight, up and down, and really, really get into the meat, to the roots of what a coaching search could be and the way it should be. And really, Tom, there should no longer be full-time coaches. Every year, it's like a fantasy team. Everybody, all of the coaches just are put back into the pool and you draft. But again, this draft must take at least 2 or 3 months. Plenty of speculations. Oh, Tom, we could do mock drafts too. We have completely changed college football for the better for mock draft coaches. I can't wait.
I think the best barometer of the world you're describing right now about covering like a 2 to 3 month coaching search with just huge lists of random names. Basically, what you're describing is being a Tennessee football writer. I'm not sure that that's really the world you want to live in. Like, I don't know if you've thought this idea all the way through. The clicks. Oh yes, the clicks. But I'm not sure you've thought this all the way through.
Fair point.
It's covering living through a coaching search is as you're covering the team is certainly a lot of fun. I was covering the John Cooper to Jim Tressel coaching search. I know I've told this story before, but it's relevant for this purpose. I was working at Channel 4 at that point, and this had dragged on and on. Jim Tressel didn't get hired. If you don't remember, John Cooper got fired after the Outback Bowl. So that was January 2nd of 2001. Jim Tressel didn't get hired until January 18th of 2001. So it was like 2.5 weeks of stuff dragging out and just insane rumors and names. And, Mike Bellotti, Oregon coach, Mike Bellotti is going to be in town. And so I dutifully sat in an unmarked news car in the parking lot of the Fawcett Center for 4 hours on a Saturday morning and didn't see Mike Bellotti. And at one point, we had a fantastic source, great source, tell us it is Glenn Mason. Glenn Mason is the guy. And we didn't run it because in journalism, you need 2 sources. And we didn't run it. And turns out Glenn Mason was not the guy. And they hired Jim Tressel instead. So it is a lot of fun. It's completely hectic to live through. Everyone is fascinated. The town is riveted and on the edge of their seats. But yeah, I don't think if there was like a 2-month Ohio State coaching search, I think we would all just be dead. Like the pressure, the constant strain, I think everyone would just die. So I don't think you've thought that all the way through, I guess is my point.
No, I haven't. And probably through like my third is Bobby Petrino next in line piece. I would be like, I can't do this anymore. Ohio State needs to get their coach. I can't do another Bobby Petrino to Ohio State or, any of that ilk. You're right. Maybe Gene Smith got it right this time. He got it right with Chris Holtmann. We'll see if Ryan Day is the next Chris Holtmann. One of the problems that some Buckeye fans have with the hire is that Ryan Day isn't an Ohio guy. And they go back to John Cooper because obviously he was not an Ohio guy and he didn't get the Michigan game and we saw the results. Ryan Day talking on Tuesday said, the first priority is to beat your rival, and then the second priority is to beat everybody else. And so he seems to understand it. He's been in it twice, and I don't know if everybody saw it, but his offense put quite a spanking on Michigan a couple of weeks ago. So he seems to understand it, even though he is not from Ohio. I don't know necessarily what being from Ohio would, like, if that would give him an edge. Because, Tom, I mean, they don't play euchre at halftime. The coaches, Michigan coaches and Ohio State coaches, there isn't that, there's no, the understanding of the rivalry is one thing. And I asked him, on Tuesday during the press conference, I asked Ryan Day, when did you know you wanted this job? And he talked about being a kid watching this game, Ohio State, Michigan, on his grandfather's couch, and, knowing how special it was then. So whether you grew up in New Hampshire or you grew up in Ohio, if you grew up watching this as like an annual thing, I think that trumps, to go back to euchre, that trumps geography. When you grow up with it, you understand it, you watch it, you learn it. You can learn it in New Hampshire, you can learn it in Wisconsin, you can learn it in Ohio. You can't necessarily learn it in like Arkansas or Tennessee or wherever John Cooper was from, Tulsa, but you grow up watching it. And yeah, I think it helps when you grow up in Ohio and you're in school and that's what you talk about. And you've got the jerk Michigan friends who just sometimes they just decide to become Michigan fans because they're idiots. But Tom, like, you didn't grow up in Ohio, but you still have an understanding of the rivalry. So I think geography is nice, and that's what Urban Meyer wants. He wants these Ohio ties. But if you already have an understanding, or if you grew up with an understanding, I think you can get around the Ohio citizenship angle.
I'm pretty sure Ryan Day has an Ohio driver's license at this point after living here for 2 years, probably votes here, all that kind of stuff. I think that there's two angles to the Ohio thing. The first is recruiting. Do you know the state? Do you know all the high schools in the state? Do you know the coaches? All that kind of stuff. I'm sure Ryan Day has a pretty good handle on recruiting Ohio at this point after a couple of years. Knows the programs, knows the people. The people here know him. He's not some crazy outsider. He's not coming straight from New Hampshire. He actually has spent a couple of years in Ohio. That is a relevant data point there. The other thing is, if you didn't understand the rivalry, even if he had not grown up watching it on his grandfather's couch, if you spend 2 years inside the Ohio State program led by Urban Meyer, I'm pretty sure at that point you have a pretty good sense for how the rivalry is treated, how the rivalry should be treated, how it should be talked about, how it should be respected, what it means. Like, if Ryan Day hasn't figured out the Ohio State-Michigan rivalry after 2 years inside Urban Meyer's program, that's not a where he's from problem. That's a whole different problem. But I certainly get the sense that he has figured that out at this point. And, John Cooper had not spent the 2 years before coming to Ohio State as Earl Bruce's offensive coordinator. And he had never been in Columbus, but, he'd never been a coach anywhere in Ohio before. He had never coached in the Big Ten before. He went, I'm just doing off the top of my head, but I think he went Tulsa. I think it was Tulsa and then Arizona State. I know he came straight from Arizona State. But so if they had brought in, I don't know, Todd Graham, like if you bring in Todd Graham or Clay Helton because he won the Rose Bowl, like, yeah, you could make a doesn't know Ohio argument there, but I don't think that's really a concern with Ryan Day.
Like, if people are upset, like if Ryan Day doesn't even know like what pop is, how can you be Ohio State coach if you say soda instead of pop?
That's why I didn't get the job.
Yeah, you're a monster. And I'll tell you what, Tom, if somebody is in an interview process with Gene Smith and they talk about standing online for something, gone right there. I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're Nick freaking Saban, you want the job. Tom, if you're one of those people like you who say online instead of inline, I don't want you as my coach because we speak entirely different languages. And you need to learn to speak Ohioan. Okay?
That should be a setting on Google Translate.
Yes.
I'll type something in. Translate to English to Ohio. There we go. Okay, now I know how to say it.
Did you mean to say inline?
I was wondering why Gene Smith threw me out of his office halfway through the interview. Now I know. Now it makes a lot more sense. Because otherwise I thought I was perfectly qualified for the head coaching job.
Yeah.
But now it all makes sense.
You were like,
at least I'll know for next time.
You were like, yeah, I was standing on line at Chipotle, and Gene's like, get out.
I was standing on line at Chipotle. Didn't want a burrito, just wanted to get a soda. Get out.
You son of a... I'm so furious right now. So then this becomes a question of what does this mean for the players? I think Nick Bosa, it means that he's still going to go to the NFL, frankly. I don't think this is enough to bring him back.
Bold take.
A lot of people are asking, what does this mean for Tate Martell? And this is with the assumption that Dwayne Haskins is gone. I mean, for me, if Tate Martell is the starting quarterback next year, Tom, here's my stat line for him, and this is with all seriousness. 3,500 yards passing, 1,000 yards rushing. Where am I wrong?
You're probably a little high on the passing, but I could see him making it up with more rushing yards. So I'm gonna read a quote from Ryan Day on Tuesday. He did not mention Tate Martell by name, but you tell me who he was talking to. On offense, we continue to force defenses to cover the entire field this year as we went from J.T. Barrett to Dwayne Haskins at quarterback this season, which took on a very different attack. But I feel strongly about our offense's ability to modify and adapt to our personnel year in and year out. Who do you think he was talking to there? I can't imagine.
Yeah, and it's also nice that a Ohio State head coach is willing to do that rather than like, no, we are going to do my offense and this is how we're going to do it. Whereas Ryan Day, to go back to the Jim Tressel comparison, Jim Tressel was always, our offense is going to resemble the pieces around it and what they do best. To go from, once you throw Dwayne Haskins into the mix, you go J.T. Barrett to Dwayne Haskins to whomever else, you've got like this spike right in the middle, and that's Dwayne Haskins. And so whoever else you're going to go to is going to be a smaller spike. And whether that's Tate Martell, who can do the running, or Matthew Baldwin, or even Dwan Mathis, who I think we'll just assume is going to redshirt, possibly Chugs, possibly Beef, likely either Baldwin or Martell. I happen to believe that Martell would be just fine in this offense, and I think Day happens to believe that as well. And what does this mean for Tate Martell? It means he's going to be competing to be the starting quarterback next year. And however that goes, it goes. And if he wins the job, then you move forward. If he doesn't, you move forward with Matthew Baldwin, and we'll see what happens with Tate. But he's finally going, everybody, those two basically, are going to have a Dwayne Haskins, Joe Burrow competition. And it's going to be, back to that, is the loser going to leave? And then you're perpetually trying to catch up from losing that guy. But we've got a lot of time to talk about that. We've got an entire offseason to talk about who's going to transfer after they don't win the starting job. Well,
we don't have a 2-month coaching search, but boy howdy, are we going to have an 8-month quarterback controversy? You can't see me, but I'm just tenting my fingers and clapping excitedly. Oh, it's going to be great.
We were me and another guy were talking to Matthew Baldwin after the Big Ten championship game. And by the way, Ohio State won the Big Ten championship last week on Saturday against Northwestern.
What year was that? Yeah. I don't remember. That seems so long ago.
We could talk about the best thing and the worst thing we saw, but neither one of us remembers the game because it was forever ago. So we were talking to Matthew Baldwin, and it was just two of us. He's like in the corner of the locker room where the quarterbacks are, and me and the other guy were just like basically like shielding him from the rest of the room. And we're talking to him like, do you understand, like, when Dwayne goes pro, you are going to be right in the middle of an Ohio State quarterback battle, which could end up being like the biggest story of the college football season. And we're not trying to like overblow this. And I'm like, and I told Matthew Baldwin, like, a year ago at this time, we were talking to Joe Burrow and he was talking about transferring. Like, this is just the way it is. And Baldwin's like, well, I'm really not trying to think about it, so, but thanks for, giving me anxiety, and now I won't sleep for 17 months, but it's going to be pretty fun. We'll get to it later on repeatedly and ad nauseum, but maybe, Tom, maybe we won't, because maybe, just maybe, Dwayne Haskins will want to play one more season for his new head coach, Ryan Day, right?
Maybe. Maybe I didn't read something this week that had him as a top 10 draft pick in some mock draft. Maybe. I don't know. I mean, who's to say? Anything could happen right now, up to and including him being a top 15 NFL draft pick next year. I mean, anything is possible. You know
how coaches talk about, like Jim Tressel would say, if a guy has a first round pick, you should go. Ryan Day is probably like, in his mind, like, Dwayne should go, but I'd really kind of like to have him my first season as Ohio State's head coach. And so, you know how like Gene Smith has to recuse himself from talking up Ohio State to the college football committee? When it comes time for Ryan Day and Dwayne Haskins to talk about leaving, like, well, Day will have to recuse himself from talking about staying at Ohio State because he's clearly biased. But no, I don't expect.
Pro, you could break even more of all of the records in the Ohio State record book. Con, not $30 million. So, I mean, there's a lot to weigh here. I don't know.
True.
Could go either way.
A lot of records are priceless, frankly. Like the record for most money.
Actually, I'm pretty sure there's a price on that.
Well, I don't fly in those circles, so. The other question is, what does this mean for the coaching staff? Ryan Day said that he will address that after the Rose Bowl, which, duh. He's not going to start firing people now. But
why not? Twitter wants him to.
So, yes. And again, there will be time to talk about this as well. Not as much time. But Tom, for you, who are the safe coaches? I'll go. I believe Brian Hartline is safe. I'd say Tony Alford is safe.
Yep, I'd agree there.
Alex Grinch is safe, just because he's so new.
I think so.
And I could see everybody else not necessarily get fired, but decide, I'm going to go do something else, or Ryan Day say, you know what, I've got other guys in mind. Like, do you see anybody else as safe? Maybe Taver Johnson? I don't know. Larry Johnson, if he wants to be back, he'll be back.
Yes, that's what I was going to say. Yeah. If Larry Johnson is not back next year, that is Larry Johnson's decision and not Ryan Day's. But yeah, I think that's probably pretty much where I would fall. I think I think Hartline for sure, Alfred for sure. I would think Grinch very likely. I think Larry Johnson, if he wants to come back. And yeah, I mean, Taver Johnson, probably. I think they want to keep as much continuity as they can, but there are certainly some areas where there might be a potential upgrade available somewhere. And
really? Like who? Like where?
I don't know, but
I don't know.
I'll tell you what, when we write an article about potential coaching changes, why don't you go through the comments and just see the people who are very disappointed that Ryan Day didn't hit a certain coach with like a stone cold stunner in the middle of the press conference today on Tuesday, and then you'll probably have a sense for who might be people that people are ready to maybe have move on.
Interesting.
You know what? And you know what? Let me throw another name out there. if Kevin
Yeah.
Wilson wants to stay, Kevin Wilson would stay too.
I was just going to say that.
I forgot about him, but yeah, he would. I don't know. I think that he probably came to Ohio State with the idea he was going to do a 2-year stint in Urban Meyer's Home for Wayward Boys and then go get another head coaching job somewhere. But I don't. I would guess that Ryan Day would prefer that Kevin Wilson stay, and then he has the guy to kind of keep working with, and they obviously had some tremendous success this season. So I think that would be something that, very much like Larry Johnson, if he wants to stay, he would stay.
The recruiting angle, Ohio State lost a commitment from 4-star 2020 safety legend Cavazos on Tuesday night. Decommitted. He's still going to allow Ohio State to recruit him. He's still going to look into Ohio State. But he was one of those guys who committed for Urban Meyer, and he's not alone. So far, he's the only commitment as of Tuesday night. I wouldn't be surprised if he is not the last. But these 2020 kids, you've still got time to work on them to get them back into the fold. But right now, you've got to wrap up 2019 and keep those guys solid. We're talking, 3 weeks from Wednesday is the early signing period, which is when most kids sign. Although this year, some of those kids who were planning on signing for Ohio State might wait until they can take another official visit to Ohio State, which will be allowed so that they can meet with Ryan Day. Ryan Day right now is out and about recruiting. Urban Meyer is staying back. The thing is, when you announce a coach in waiting or a new head coach, that person then has to abide by the head coaching recruiting rules. So that was one of the reasons why doing a head coach in waiting was never really going to happen. Because if you announce Ryan Day as a head coach in waiting for 3 years or whatever, he has to abide by head coach recruiting rules, which means he's not able to go and see everybody like assistant coaches can. There are different rules for him. So he can only do maybe one in-home visit as a head coach or something rather than multiple as an assistant coach. So right now he is going out and doing a bunch of his in-homes to put his face out there. And I think on Tuesday he said he's got to go see some of the defensive guys to just get to know them better. But I mean, Tom, a lot of the guys you did a piece today, a lot of the guys, the commitments have reaffirmed and saying, that they're still 100% committed, like the 2020 quarterback Jack Miller, but the concern there is Paris Johnson, whose family is like, well, we need to talk to Ryan Day and get to know the situation more before they can comment or move forward.
Yeah, there's the top recruit in the 2019 class, Garrett Wilson, the wide receiver from Texas, who went to high school with Matthew Baldwin. He committed. He was still 100% committed to Ohio State. He tweeted that today. And so he should be signing in just a couple weeks. But yeah, the top recruit in the 2020 class, who's Paris Johnson, who's an offensive lineman from Cincinnati, his mom gave an interview and said it was kind of a little bit up in the air right now, and they want to kind of evaluate where things stand. He would be, if he did decommit, he would be a huge loss for 2 reasons. One, he's a fantastic prospect. He's ranked 10th overall in the country, number 2 offensive tackle, number 1 player in the state. That is not someone you can afford to lose just from an on-field perspective. But maybe more important in the short term, before he gets to Ohio State, he has been one of their most vocal ambassadors, both on social media and in person. When they had other 5-star players in for games, he always walked down the tunnel with them. Keely Ringo, who's a 5-star corner from, I think, California. I have a picture of Keely Ringo, and Paris Johnson's right there with him. There are a whole bunch of guys like that where Paris Johnson was there every single week. I think we have a picture of Paris Johnson at every single Ohio State home game this year because he was always there. He's always there helping show guys around. He had committed earlier this year and said when he committed, he was going to wait till he knew where he wanted to go, and he didn't want to decommit. He wanted to just commit where he wanted, figure out where he wanted to go. commit and then be done and then be able to go out and recruit other guys. So if he did leave, and again, this has not happened yet. They're just sort of evaluating where things stand, and they just need to talk to Ryan Day, and that may be one conversation and everything's okay again. Because I'm sure that he did not commit just for Urban Meyer. He had a closer relationship with Urban Meyer, but he did not just commit for Urban Meyer. So that is something that could very well be fixed with one good conversation with Ryan Day, and then everything's fine. But if he did decommit, that would be really a pretty big loss. But that has not happened yet. So there are a couple guys in the 2019 class that had been, one in particular, who had been perceived as wavering on his commitment as potentially flipping to Alabama, and I would assume that the Urban Meyer news did not help Ohio State in that particular recruiting battle, but we'll see. Right, like you said, right now there's only the one guy as of Tuesday evening.
Recruiting battle, so to speak.
So to speak.
Dwan Mathis reaffirmed his commitment. I believe Steele Chambers is, just wants to, talk to Ryan Day about things. But Garrett Wilson, Jameson Williams, those two guys are solid, and I think Garrett Wilson is so good. As long as you get him and you fill out the other 23 spots or whatever, things will work out. So that's where things stand recruiting wise. There'll probably be more news for the 100th episode next week. With all of that and the Urban Meyer announcement, what does that mean for the Rose Bowl and Ohio State's performance against Washington? For me, I believe this means Washington is in serious trouble, where I could see this being as close to a flawless game as Ohio State can play. I don't see them coming out flat. I see them already imagining taking Urban Meyer off the field on their shoulders. So I can see them playing their best game of their season and putting a whooping on Washington. And as soon as the announcement was made this morning, I believe the line jumped a couple of points in the morning. It went from like 4.5 to 6.5 or something like that, 4 to 6. And I am just expecting an outstanding performance for the Buckeyes. Where are you right now?
That is certainly what I would expect. I don't think focus will be an issue for the Rose Bowl. I think Urban Meyer, as much as Urban Meyer has harped on the team about respecting the Michigan game and treating the Michigan game with the proper reverence and proper focus and the results that he's had there, the way he talks about the Rose Bowl is the same way he talks about the Michigan game. That is like above and beyond anything else in his eyes. And this is his first time there, and this is his chance to go out as a winner. And if Urban Meyer can't go out getting carried off the field after a national championship, I think getting carried off the field at the Rose Bowl would be probably second on his list of best possible ways to have his coaching career at Ohio State end. And I have a feeling that will get communicated very clearly to all the players on the team. And yeah, I just looked at the line. It did jump from 4.5 to 6. It's at 6 right now for Ohio State. And yeah, Washington does not have a very good offense this year. Washington has a pretty good defense, but Ohio State has dunked on some pretty good defenses later in the year. So yeah, I think that could end up pretty. Ohio State could beat them pretty enthusiastically if everything breaks the way it seems like it could.
Here's what I'm envisioning: urban headbands, obviously. The Buckeyes wearing red high top ponies, obviously. And also Urban wearing a fedora with his windbreaker. What do you think?
I'm just picturing all of the Ohio State players just blowing out their ankles and Achilles wearing 1987 pony shoes. Like, I'm sure I think sneaker technology has improved somewhat since 1987. So maybe not the ponies.
Whatever.
Otherwise, yep, 2 thumbs up.
Yeah, I was born a pony guy. I'll die a pony guy. I don't know what else is out there. Okay.
You'll die a pony guy, probably due to a broken leg.
The bone punctured the skin. I bled out. It was gangrene. But I'm a pony guy, man.
For now.
All right. Hey, you know what? That's going to do it. That's the show. All about Urban Meyer stepping down, retiring, Ryan Day taking over. Next week, we might probably still be talking about this in some form or fashion, along with we should be talking to players hopefully Tuesday, and then we can bring that to you afterwards. That's up to Ohio State Sports Information Department and the player schedules. We won't talk to them at all this week. So next week will be our first chance to talk to them about so many things. So many things. And then hopefully we can bring that to you. If not, maybe, I don't know, we'll do a bonus show. If it happens that we talk to them on Wednesday or something of that nature, we'll try to carve out some time. It's difficult right now, you know. Getting this email at 7:30 Tuesday morning is not ideal, Tom. But I'm not going to complain. People don't like complaining, so I'm not going to do it. We'll save that for, you know what? We'll start a Patreon where we just complain after each show, and if people want to pay to hear that, I would be glad to do that. Just complain about the mundane things that impact us through this job. But I won't do that here. I only do that for the paying customers.
Well, that is definitely the best business model possible. Because what do people on the internet like? Complaining. There you go. We should point out we have done an hour and a half of podcast right now, and there is before the next time we record a show, it is possible, not particularly likely, but it is possible that an Ohio State quarterback could have won the Heisman Trophy between now and the next time we win the show. So we should at least acknowledge that Dwayne Haskins is the Heisman Trophy finalist. Not that there's anything else going on this week, so I don't know how that got lost in the shuffle, but and also our position on the Heisman Trophy is pretty well established at this point. But that's fine. Just seemed like something we should mention before we officially sign off for the week.
Dwayne Haskins, if you guys have forgotten, he's a quarterback at Ohio State. Big numbers. The Heisman is an award, and it takes place in New York. Yeah, I completely. That's not in the rundown. So thank you, Tom, for mentioning that. It's big news. So yeah, we'll find out what happens there. Do we want to do an instant reaction Saturday night?
Do we want to, or should we? Because I think they're different answers. If Dwayne Haskins wins the Heisman, we should probably do a podcast Saturday night. Right. I'm not anticipating that we'll have to do a podcast Saturday night.
I would like to see Kyler Murray. I think he was consistent enough throughout the season to win it. Obviously, Dwayne Haskins was as well. I think Tua slowed down there at the end, and we'll see where it ends up. But yeah, I don't anticipate doing anything Saturday night, which, that's my life. let's be honest.
And I do kind of think it would be better for college football in general if Tua won it. Not that he's more deserving, but it would be better if he won it, because then you have the possibility that Alabama gets a little bit fat and lazy the next month. Because if Kyler Murray wins it, then Kyler Murray is going to get broken into 7.5 different pieces by Alabama in the playoff game, and nobody wins then. So
that's true.
I think I would much rather see Tua win and then have Alabama blow the playoff game. I think that's the funniest way for this season to end.
What'll happen is Tua will win, and then about halfway through his speech, he'll start tanking, and then Jalen Hurts will run up onto the stage and save the day for Tua, just like he did against Georgia, and people will be like, "That is the best speech I have ever heard," and there won't be a dry eye anywhere. People will be bawling. Tua will be crying so much just from watching Jalen Hurts and the way he saved the day with his beautiful speech about how helping children in Nicaragua is, like winning the Heisman. And also his grandmother. And people will be like, wow, I did not know that you could tie all three of these things together. But he did it, and it was beautiful.
And then they'll cut to Kirk Herbstreit, and Kirk Herbstreit will be explaining how Jalen Hurts' speech means that Jake Fromm should go from 4th to 3rd in the Heisman voting for some reason. That'll be how that broadcast signs off. It'll be great.
You know what, Tom, let's do a second hour right now on that Georgia Bowl crap because I'm fired up right now. I know we were almost out. We were almost out, and you're thinking, you know what? I could probably get this edited by 11 o'clock at night. But now we're going to go until 11, and you're going to have to edit until 2. All right?
I could actually fix this problem just by hitting stop on my recorder and then just shutting off my computer. That would solve the problem.
Tom? Hello, Tom?
Hello? Are you there? Hello?
Well, I guess that's our show.
Yay!
All right. Thank you all for listening. Make sure to check out the rest of the shows on the Ozone Radio Network. Monday, you've got Sloopcast. Tuesday, Silver Bullets Podcast. Wednesday, us. Thursday, Sons of Schmidt. Friday, you've got the Sloopcast again. This Saturday, who knows? Maybe us again Saturday night. Don't count on it, though. And as always, hey, thank you all for the reviews, the ratings. We appreciate it. Continue to do that if you have not yet, or start to do that, rather, if you have not yet. It is appreciated. Helps us get seen by more people, which makes us feel better about ourselves. So until the next time, don't forget about Dwayne Haskins. Heisman Trophy ceremony Saturday night from 8 until or 7 and 8 or 8 to 9. Most of the show will be about Tua and Kyler Murray and how Dwayne Haskins really was just the third guy and how Urban Meyer is walking away from a scandal-ridden program. But you know that. You know that. So make sure to check it out and then come back and listen to us next week and everybody else. Check out everything at theozone.net. There's a coaching change going on, so there'll be some stuff there as well. Thanks. See ya.